Greetings, everybody. This is Peter Hecht coming to you live from Magna Legal Services. We are the virtual company, and we are taking our conferences into the virtual space. Some of you may remember that, a few weeks ago, or actually probably many weeks ago, this group of folks that are joining us today would have been with us in Las Vegas at the Aria Hotel and Casino, enjoying another March Madness conference, a magnified event. Unfortunately, and by the way, I hate COVID-19, and you all hate COVID-19 too. It disrupted our conference, but we don't hold back. At Magna, we keep moving things forward. And so with the great assistance of these folks here today, we are going to bring you their panel. It was originally supposed to be about pet peeves, which, by the way, is all about communication. So before I hand this over to this great looking panel, let me just give you a brief commercial message. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm the chief salesperson here at Magna Legal Services. So as I mentioned, Magna Legal Services is an end-to-end litigation consulting and support company. And maybe I didn't mention that, so now I just did. So what you need to be thinking about is your next deposition. When you want it to happen, and you want it to happen right in the virtual space, what you want to do is dial 866-624-6221 and ask for Magna Legal Services. We will schedule your virtual deposition. We will give you that white glove service so we can show you how to handle your exhibits, do the technology test, and make sure that it works right. And now, without further ado, I am going to turn this session over to Dan Reinhardt, good friend of Magna Legal Services, the chair of the litigation department at Blank Rome. They're a premier litigation firm. And by the way, he's just a great moderator. So without further ado, Dan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Peter. Peter just got finished making fun of my bad beard. But these are interesting times we're living in here. And hi, everybody. Hard to believe we've gone from the concept of presenting in Las Vegas during March Madness to the Hollywood squares from our homes. But we'll take what we can get. It's fun to be together, and it's great to see you all, at least my fellow panel members. And hope everyone in the audience is doing well, making it through these crazy times. And it's almost time for happy hour, which is what we would have been doing in Las Vegas. So if you want to bring a cocktail to this event, this is the time. Thanks for joining us today. Our topic today is the in-house outside counsel relationship, and how do you keep it going during a crisis, and how have things changed during this crazy pandemic, aside from the fact that we are all now in-house counsel, right? Come on. That's my first joke of the day. Come on. Let me start with our panel. I'll just briefly, we have with us today Chris Greene, the Chief Claims Officer and General Counsel of Canal Insurance. We have Kim Jessum, the Chief IP Counsel and Assistant General Counsel of Heraeus Group. Trevor Newberry, Assistant General Counsel of PruittHealth. Jennifer Price, Assistant General Counsel from MetLife. And Dan Wolfe, Senior Jury Consultant at Magna. And I'd love for you all to go around the horn and talk a little bit about what you do at your companies, what sort of work you handle, and maybe how you use outside counsel. And to start in alphabetical order, Chris, maybe we could start with you.
Sure. Thanks. I really appreciate it. And thanks to Magna and Peter for organizing this. I think we're all disappointed we're not in Vegas, but Peter, he always puts it together, man. So thanks for letting me take a little of your time today. At Canal, Dan mentioned it. I'm the General Counsel, Chief Claims Officer. During this pandemic, or really before it, I realized I had a couple of other jobs at Canal too. I run the Enterprise Risk Management Program. I run the Business Continuity Program. So I've had a really full plate the last few weeks. I'm coming to you from my home. We've been remote from the work standpoint the past 5 weeks, and it's gone very smooth. I think thanks to our pre-planning on business continuity, and I'm just happy to be here. So,
thanks, Chris. Kim, how about you?
Hi, I'm Kim Jessum. I am Chief IP Counsel U.S., Associate General Counsel and Secretary for Heraeus Incorporated. It's located in the Philadelphia area, and our business is trading precious metals, and also we manufacture a lot of different things in different industries, ranging from medical components to quartz glass to sensors and bone cement. So I work with outside counsel quite often, mostly I would say with our patent portfolio, but we have litigation, which unfortunately these days, at least for us, we have a little bit more than we want. And also we have a lot of work. I mean, with the COVID-19, we've obviously had to go to outside counsel. Maybe it's not so obvious, but we have, and I'll give a kudos to Blank Rome because we've used Blank Rome in that sense. And any other more when it's someone we need with expertise. So our general commercial work, which I would say I primarily do, that's with contracts. I'll do that mostly in-house, but for things that need a lot more people or a lot more time, then we'll farm that out.
Thanks, Kim. Trevor, how about you?
Hey everybody, it's Trevor Newberry. I'm Assistant General Counsel at PruittHealth in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been here about a year, and before that I was a litigator with Huff Powell Bailey in Atlanta defending medical malpractice cases. We have a ton of PL, professional liability and general liability, and that's primarily what I oversee. We've got outside counsel in 4 different states, and as in the nursing home industry, we stay very, very busy with lawsuits, as you might imagine. It's especially tough during this time, but really glad to be here, and thanks to Magna for having us.
Is there something going on with nursing homes during this time?
Exactly. Can't stay out of the news.
Must be an interesting business. Jennifer Price, tell us how you're doing. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. All right, great. Hope I'm keeping my fingers crossed I don't have any technological difficulties here. It's been a struggle for me. That being said, I'm Assistant General Counsel at MetLife. I've been at the company, 18, 19 years. I oversee all of MetLife's individual disability non-ERISA business from the legal point, and I also oversee all of MetLife's P&C House Counsel offices, which span 5 states and about 75 individuals, including attorneys and paralegals who handle P&C litigation. And I'm coming to you from New York.
Beautiful.
As far as my relationship with,
Jen.
I was just going to say, as far as my relationship with outside counsel, obviously when we are sued, which does happen, or when we may file a lawsuit, we do retain outside counsel all over the country, depending on what jurisdiction we're in. On the House counsel side, a little less, since our in-house house counsels function really as outside counsel in certain jurisdictions.
Is that primarily disability insurance related?
That's for really motor vehicle accident and premises liability, like uninsured, underinsured motorists, those type of things, and no fault.
Great. Dan Wolfe.
Greetings, everyone, and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel. I'm honored and privileged to participate with such a distinguished group. And just by way of brief background, I've had the benefit of combining the discipline of being a lawyer and a psychologist 30 plus years ago and doing litigation consulting. And my primary focus is to work with both in-house and outside counsel and kind of bridging that gap from the crazy world of how we as humans make decisions, whether it be jurors, judges, arbitrators, mediators, to that world of the litigation arena and understanding that process. Now with the evolution to a more online virtual reality world of online arbitrations, depositions, arbitrations, and dare I say online virtual jury trials, that's a brave new world that we're in. So hopefully we can share some of those insights and thoughts as we navigate in this new world, how we're going to deal with that.
Hey, Dan, before you get started, it's Peter Hecht. I'm back. I wanted to give a plug for our virtual debt service. Just kidding. Actually, what I wanted to remind all the folks that are watching us right now is that there's a live chat feature built into the platform, and Gene Billings will be monitoring the chats. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Dan or the esteemed panel, just chat them through, and where appropriate, Gene will try to plug them in. Sorry for the interruption.
Peter, you win for the best virtual background with the Magna Command Center behind you. So let's start with a simple question. How are you doing working from home? What challenges are you facing as in-house counsel now that you're not going into an office every day? And maybe Kim, start with you.
Sure. I mean, obviously we all have the interruption. More interruptions these days. I mean, right before this, I had to get rid of, sorry, I don't want to say wrong choice of words. I had to take my cat out of the room so she's not jumping on me and the tail's coming up. I've had that on conferences. I also have kids, so they don't understand that mommy's working from home and not to disturb me. So those things are a little bit of a challenge, but at the same time, I'm not commuting. I mean, my commute is 3 hours per day if I'm going into the office. So I save time on that. I can get a little exercise in because I can't just sit in my house all day. But I think the biggest challenge with the work is that we've been thrust into this COVID-19 legal framework where we don't have any idea how to handle it. I mean, obviously, you know, all of a sudden there's this CARES Act, there's this, and I mean, HR is scrambling. And I mean, I think we're doing a good job, particularly because we are using outside counsel, but day to day, I don't see much of a change. I mean, it's funny because I am a patent lawyer also by training. My R&D people are actually having more time to fill out invention disclosure forms because they have time and they're not in the lab or in their R&D facility. So it's a little bit of a change, but there's, I mean, plenty of contracts. I mean, litigation is going on. I mean, obviously courts are closed, but we still can do things. So I think from a day-to-day basis, the work has not changed a lot except for the COVID-19.
Trevor, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, there are definitely challenges with it, and there's some great things that I've learned about it. You know, the challenges are, of course, if you hear some screaming in the background, it's my toddler who's running around upstairs, and that's been one challenge. Although, you know, she's been very helpful in mediations. You know, I will say, as far as mediations go, and you know, in depositions, it really, it's been fairly seamless. I mean, particularly, you know, using Zoom as we're doing today. You know, I mean, it really simplifies the process for a lot of these mediations and allows us to get them done efficiently, even though we can't be there. I will say though, you know, I miss being in my office and being able to walk over to our, you know, our GC's office and talk about something. If it's something that pops in my head, you know, now it's a phone call or a video meeting and everything's scheduled, everything's regimented. So I think you miss a little bit of that spontaneity and facilitating discussion. But we're surviving.
Jennifer, how about you?
I've had a variety of challenges. I have a small child here as well who's very active and likes to either participate or photobomb me during Zoom calls. The more important the call, the more questionable the behavior behind me suddenly may get. So I've had a couple of embarrassing incidents. That being said, I'm able to do a lot of my job from here. I think really from a workflow perspective, other than not being able to go to the mediations or depositions and do certain things in person that I would, the biggest function challenge I've really had is normally I think there's a little bit of separation in the workday when you're going into an office. So you get up, you go there, you're working. Yeah, of course, we all may check our emails or have something we have to do at night, but essentially it's you're working and then you're doing whatever you do after work. And I think when you're home and you're not really going anywhere, the workday seems to have a lot more blurred lines about what's the beginning of the workday and really what's the end of the workday.
Chris,
but otherwise just kind of adapting on a day-by-day basis.
Yeah, so two things I've learned, which I think are important, is I wish I could get into a time machine and go buy Zoom stock. That would be awesome. And the second thing is I really like virtual happy hours. I didn't think I would enjoy that, but I'm warming up to that. But seriously, we're a small insurance company. I mean, we conduct business in 46 states, but but we're small and we're a community, and everybody, for the most part, works here in Greenville, South Carolina, in our headquarters. And you know, running a claims organization, running a legal department, it's important to basically be transparent and collaborative every single day. And you know, working from home, you lose a little bit of that. So I've appreciated the virtual conferencing, and that being really kind of the sole way you can communicate with people. And it's working. It's not optimal, but it's working.
So staying with you for a minute, Chris, what issues are you having with outside counsel? And it can be good or bad. What are you dealing with where there have been changes in the way you communicate with outside counsel?
Yeah, well, we've never done these Zoom conferences before, so that's certainly new. But I think you're just you're finding new ways to stay engaged on the file. We're probably talking to our outside counsel more, which I don't know how that's going to impact our ALA, but I think it's, you recognize that, and it may just be because we're at the same time we're asking our outside panel to help us look for resolution opportunities more so, and maybe a little more aggressive on looking for resolution opportunities because of the circumstances we're in, and that's going well. So I think if this becomes the new norm in how we have to interact with our employees and our outside counsel, we'll get used to it. I hope it's not, but it may be.
Is anyone seeing things that are annoying them where you feel like your counsel are out of touch? Is anyone getting sick of COVID-19 alerts yet? Or you love them 10 times a day, every day?
Sick of them.
I kind of like them.
Yeah, I like them too. I like them too. Hey, Dan, I will say this though. I was surprised, and I think for the most part, our panel was ready for this and adapted very well. But I was surprised there was a segment of our panel that it took them days to really get up to speed. They really hadn't thought ahead on their continuity plan and having to ramp up a remote from work from home protocol or have a skeletal crew in the office to do things. That was surprising to me.
Meaning the law firms were not prepared.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Most
Most of them were, but there were a few that I was surprised had not anticipated this.
I've had a really positive experience with outside counsel. I mean, the transitions for our firms have been pretty seamless into a virtual world. I don't get too many COVID alerts other than the ones from my own internal, in our own organization. And, counsel's been good about keeping us up to date in the news. I mean, y'all know, of course, that nursing homes are in the news every single day. And you just cannot keep track of all the media. And it's, frankly, that's part of my job to do that. And so they've been very, very helpful in that regard. The only annoying thing is when people can't figure out lighting in their own house and they come across as a giant shadow, and it's terrifying in media. It never gets.
There's a YouTube video for that.
Trevor, how are you dealing with all these issues in the nursing home world? You guys have over 90 nursing and assisted living locations. You must be dealing with the craziest time in that industry, and you've only been there for a year.
That's right. Fortunately, we've got a really good, robust team in our legal department and our communications department. And I will say, as a company, I'm proud of how we've handled it because we're focusing on, of course, taking care of our residents and our employees, number one, and then also I like to think that we've taken a position of full disclosure. I think it may be an error for some companies that try to hide these diagnoses and try to hide what they're doing about them for fear of bad PR. I mean, I think people in this time particularly appreciate disclosure and openness and how we're handling the situation, because I think we all have to recognize it's a tragic thing to happen to anybody, especially to a population as fragile as our residents.
Kim, how about you with outside counsel? What do you wish outside counsel understood better or knew about your company and your situation?
So I guess I'm the only one that said I was annoyed by too many alerts. And maybe it's just because I have a lot of contacts that email me a lot, but I think instead of the canned alerts, I think what's been more helpful is someone write to me specifically or to me and my, the other in-house counsel and say, hey, this is new or this is how it's applicable to you. So I think if a little bit more time was spent on the alert and tailoring it to my company specifically, especially if it's in-house counsel, or sorry, outside counsel that we already use, then I think that's more helpful. And I will most likely read it because it's addressed to me rather than just an alert. And I might have to take action on it because I'm realizing, oh, I didn't even consider that. So I think that's more, and at least I've talked to some outside counsel and some of them are not as busy. And obviously we've seen in the news that some firms are taking steps to either minimize, I guess, what's happening in terms of their financial stability. So I think particularly the ones that maybe aren't as busy, just take the extra time and address your in-house counsel with issues that are specifically tailored for them.
Would you recommend more phone calls, more deeper dive into your situation as opposed to blasting you with emails, or is it a more tailored email would be helpful?
I think more tailored. I mean, we have all these distractions at home. I mean, sometimes with a phone call, it's really difficult. At least with an email, I can get it. And then if, my kid's screaming, I can go take care of that and then read the email. So I think, and particularly if I see the emails from a particular person rather than a firm. So I would pay more attention to that.
Right as this conference was starting, my kids began a highly aggressive game of hide and seek. It was just like, of all times, a screaming version of hide and seek or something like that. Jennifer, how about you? What have you been seeing with outside counsel that you like or don't like during this crazy time?
I personally really like the updates. I mean, I oversee litigation all over the country, and I'm not, admitted to all of the states all over the country. I'm admitted to a few, but I'm really not necessarily on a daily basis up to date with things that are happening in different states, whether it's, courts having been closed or what they're going to be opening for or when. That's obviously affecting the timelines. One of the things that I've really appreciated that I've seen is one of the law firms that we do work with actually did send an email almost like pre-spotting issues that were very tailored to the business we do. So they said, here's some of the things we anticipate as being upcoming issues. And it was A, B, C, D, and for some of them it gave guidance. For some of them, obviously, because they're so new, not as much guidance, but even the concept of spotting many of the issues, most of which we were already onto and some of which hadn't happened yet, but then of course did happen, I thought was really helpful to all have, in one place. I thought that was very proactive and I appreciated it. But really any communication from our partners that's updating me on changes, because I really think things are changing very rapidly. I mean, I think you guys have seen even with business interruption, policies, we're seeing like in Law 360 every day, like different jurisdictions, more and more of these things being filed. And, some of the policies have different exclusions, but, it's really interesting to really keep abreast of a lot of the trends that are happening and things that we're expecting to see not only, necessarily, from a litigation standpoint, but many of the same issues are affecting us as, employees of a large organization, things about how to return to work safely with a large number of people, in a huge office. For us, we probably have 1,500 people in our office. Everybody is 6 feet apart. So there's a lot of concerns about that. And, from an employment standpoint, there are always issues like what if someone, once the office reopens, says, I don't want to come in. And what if we have litigators, since we have house counsel litigators, for instance, maybe some people are not comfortable going into courthouses that are, traditionally crowded places with lots of people. In New York, we've had a couple of courts where literally multiple court personnel, including a couple of judges, were either impacted personally by getting coronavirus, or in fact, a couple have actually passed away from complications associated with it. So I really like any information. I think I really appreciate it, since it's really a new horizon for a lot of this, and things really are rapidly evolving.
So just focusing on courts alone for a minute, are you finding it a struggle to keep track of which courts are active and what they're permitting to happen at any given time?
I mean, for the jurisdictions where I oversee the house counsel offices, I get update anytime there's a change, if things are open or not open, or if they've gotten a communication that, certain types of hearings are going to be going forward. In other words, maybe time-sensitive or emergency hearings only. Some courts have, sort of signaled we're not going to be having any trials until whatever. And then, of course, you have issues, where you have situations where, you have courts talking about using Zoom and other technology and making sure that our attorneys have, the right technology to handle these things.
Is anyone else
But
having
it's really,
trouble?
again, like it's changing all the time.
Chris?
I would say to me, that one of the benefits of having a robust panel counsel, whether you're in the middle of a pandemic or not, is just having boots on the ground for that local knowledge. And so our panel has been exceptional on notifying us on status of courts and what they're doing, and tolling the statute of limitations and all of that. So it's been that's been great, and has been a real plus for us. So I appreciate the outside lawyers doing that. We've got an awesome panel, really.
So one thing we've been seeing, like just yesterday, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania issues this order that says they expect all counsel to continue pushing forward with discovery and not use COVID-19 as an excuse, and you should use audio or visual technology for depositions. And I know New York entered a similar order a week or two ago. And so what seems to be happening is a push from the courts, perhaps aided and abetted by the plaintiffs and defense bars, to get the lawyers working again.
Sure.
And Dan, maybe I'll kick it to you as someone who's involved with the remote technology at Magna. What are you all seeing in terms of activity with depositions or otherwise?
Yeah, there's been a substantial increase in the use of the virtual environments. Even though these tools have been used for several years, folks are now overcoming what I've considered to be three primary fears. The first one is the fear of the unknown, because folks just aren't accustomed to this environment. So there's just a lot of unknown variables. And so our goal and challenge has been to educate before you advocate for a certain technology. And so that's really, I think, the challenge for all of us is to educate ourselves first, and then educate those that are working with us about the benefits of using this and overcoming that fear of the unknown. The second fear we're facing is the fear of failure, that people are just have these long-lasting fears that when you venture into a new technological platform, it's just inherently going to be fraught with errors and things aren't going to work. And some of us have experienced that. And the last one that's interesting is that folks kind of, even though they're in the comfort of their own home typically in this past 6 or 8 weeks, they've been kind of lulled into a false sense of security, of getting a little too casual, a little too relaxed. And we've seen those horror stories, right, where judges have demanded these hearings and people show up in bikinis and bathrobes and whatever. But there's interesting, particularly for deponents in online depositions, we're seeing this increased fear of public speaking, because that virtual environment, even though they're in the privacy of their own home, when they're in this kind of video chat roulette wheel, it makes them feel like there's the world watching upon them, kind of that big brother effect. So that's something we've just had to address as folks get more accustomed to using this platform and overcoming those fears. is really just to overcome those anxieties of just something that's new. You know, the proverbial "who moved my cheese?" We're facing that reality.
You know, 7 weeks ago when this all started, I saw Magna was promoting remote video depositions, and it, to me, seemed like, well, that'd be nice, but it didn't seem that realistic, just because you have to sit across the table and you have to have a pile of exhibits and you have to write on things and hand them to the court reporter and get the sticker, and just didn't sound realistic. And I have one case that's gotten hot with depositions where we've taken 4 of those now in the last couple of weeks. And it's been amazing to me how quickly it becomes normal, and how within 10 minutes and you figure out, okay, the court reporter knows how to do the exhibits, and I figure out how I ask somebody to look at an exhibit, and then you start arguing with opposing counsel, and it's like nothing has changed. They tell you to talk one at a time, and it's kind of amazing how it I thought worked really well. Does anybody on this panel, have you had any experience yet with that in any of your cases?
Well, I'll say, I mentioned this at the beginning, that if this is kind of a new normal going forward, that I'm fine with that, because I had not been a big fan of video depots and doing virtual mediations and all of that, but I've certainly warmed up to it throughout this. And certainly in my role, I can't jump on a plane and go sit in this depot or whatever, but it may entirely be a case that I wish I could eyeball the plaintiff or whatever. And I see, as this is becoming more acceptable, I can see, even if you're doing a traditional depot, you might just put a camera in there, and so that people who are back at their respective companies can participate, and that's a good thing. It really is. Now, I have a different view on mediation, but I won't go into that right now.
Dan, it's Jean. I just have a question, since we're talking about doing things remotely. To the panelists, would you consider doing a jury trial using Zoom, specifically in California? And then for Dan Wolfe, would you conduct a Zoom? How would you conduct a Zoom jury trial in California?
See,
I'd be terrified.
Just, I want to hear what you have to say, Jennifer, but is this a thing? Is anybody in California talking about jury trials by remote technology yet? Or is this a hypothetical? Because who knows? Things are changing fast these days. Does anyone know? I assume it's a hypothetical, right? Because so far I haven't seen the courts talking about that, but it could, at the rate things are changing, that could be the reality in another month, right?
Yeah, the banter is there. There's a lot of dialogue that's going on, and a lot of energy and thought being put into the practicalities of conducting it. I think when you look at jury trials nationally, the average length of a jury trial nationally is 3 days. But most of us think of the larger, complex, multi-day, multi-week long trials, which I think gives everybody extreme heartburn to think about trying a case that's long. But I think that we are going to be faced with that harsh reality that the vast majority of the, quote, what I'll call average cases are going to be considered for a virtual jury trial. And there have been actual empirical studies done using these technologies, and we've done them ourselves to look at how do you do things like voir dire? How do you do things like, witness examinations, and keeping people accountable? And how do you keep them from not being disengaged and going off and multitasking when they're supposed to be sitting in, quote, the virtual courtroom? So there are technologies out there that are available that will eliminate many of those concerns with engaging people, i.e. jurors. But I think the challenge we face from trial counsel is how do you try a multi-day, multi-week-long trial in a virtual environment? Just the thought of that, I think, gives everybody panic. But it's a harsh reality that I think we're going to have to face.
Sure hope not.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest concern would be these jurors are going to be, this might be interesting for 10 minutes, and then they're going to go, all right, I'm going to, do something else and pretend I'm watching this trial.
Well, when you look at the statistics, when the average adult American spends 7 hours on their some sort of virtual engagement. I don't know. This is something that's become so commonplace for so many people to be engaged in a virtual environment. Certainly for our millennials and now the Gen Zs, which are now starting to come of age to be on juries. I think we're going to see a radical transformation, much akin to what we did with the millennials, who were the first digital natives, right? They grew up with technology, whereas others had to learn the technology. So I think, again, whether we want to do it or not, it's, I don't know if I say it's a revolution, maybe because of COVID-19, but it's certainly an evolution that's been sped up.
I certainly wouldn't like that, but I have to say I'm a huge fan of Magna's Jury Confirm. In fact, we're doing 2 days, 2 different panels tomorrow and Friday on the case in California, and that seems to work very well. The jurors seem to stay very engaged, and albeit it's a half a day, but it works pretty well. You get a lot of good feedback, and so I could see on smaller cases you might be able to do a virtual trial that way.
What about a bench trial or a mediation? Have any of you done that yet virtually? No mediations?
I've definitely done mediations, and it's been very effective. You're able to be put in your own virtual room and with your counsel, and the mediator goes back and forth, and I find very little difference other than the free food at the mediation is really the only difference I've come across in terms of getting cases resolved. And I may be reading too much into it, but I think playing with some families tend to find a little more comfort in being at home than they do in being in a some office in downtown Atlanta with a bunch of lawyers.
You may be totally right, Trevor. I'm old school with respect to mediations and like to sit across the table from the other party and talk about the issues. But this, old dog's got to, get some new tricks every once in a while.
And there's the old theory that you force people to sit in a room long enough without food. Maybe they'll, of course, in mediations, they have the best food, right? But
you always seem to get it done at the end of the day.
Right.
There's technology out there that now can send smells across computers. So I guess that's the next step. We're going to start sending French fry smell across the room or something.
What do you all think about the expense of travel being cut in your outside counsel budgets? Because one thing that strikes me is, boy, witness prep meetings or depositions in faraway states, seems like you could accomplish that with the remote depositions. Do you guys think that's realistic?
I think to some extent, you can definitely have an opportunity to realize a savings. And I think to the extent, any of the, players find that they're able to do that efficiently, or at least efficiently enough, that may be an area where companies are going to say, hey, do we always need to be doing things in person, or what can be done remotely? For me, I also, like Chris, I'm pretty old school. I think there's just so much value on not all, but many cases in being in person, for depositions or mediations. There's so much body language that you can pick up on. And that's another thing, that I have a concern, from a jury trial, is one of the things I've always looked for when we have a jury trial is, what are the interactions between the jurors? So if we're in a format like this, right, you kind of miss the knowing looks or the smirks that one juror may be giving to another, or the eye rolls, or there are things that you may not pick up on if you're sort of looking at sort of a Brady Bunch screen. Like, even if someone's kind of nodding off, I think it's really important to understand, who's responding to what, who's your audience. But I really feel, especially at mediations, there's a lot of value, and it does make me, a little concerned, because you don't really know, you don't get to see a lot of the expressions, right? Even if it's you're passing someone on the way to the ladies' room or to go get, a snack, right? You can sort of tell what someone's mood is. Do they seem like really straighted? Do they seem like they're kind of calm, and maybe you get a sense things may resolve? One of the challenges I have is not only that it gives me an opportunity to assess what a particular plaintiff and/or their counsel is doing, right? Because sometimes you don't really see a plaintiff, and you may have a perception of them, and when you see them, you think, gee, this person's really, maybe a jury may really relate to this particular person and how they're communicating and how they're able to tell their story. Conversely, you may be like, oh my God, a jury is not going to be feeling this person at all, right? But to me, one of the most important things that I sometimes find to be really crucial at a mediation is that I don't always know from a defense perspective, right? I don't always know if a plaintiff is really fully apprised of maybe what the potential risks are or what the defense may look like versus what their lawyer is communicating to them, right? I don't know if an attorney is telling their client, you have an amazing case, don't worry, we've got this, right? And that may be their perspective, but I think there's a lot of value in seeing what the other side is going to be saying. While you may be on a witness stand in a courtroom of people, hearing about what these weaknesses are. And you never know whether that's communicated or not. So it's a very, very valuable opportunity to communicate that to the other side and at least know they heard you, even if they may not agree with you. I think another thing that I've really found valuable, and I've probably gone to hundreds of mediations all over the country, is that there's really a lot of value in being invested in the process once people have traveled and they're there, right? We've had many people who want to do the mediations and have, the insured or the claimant not be there, right? They'll be available on the phone and their attorney will come. I never agree to that. Number one, if I'm traveling from somewhere, I want them there. But I think it's very difficult if you hear something you don't like, to be, you know what, I'm out of here, I'm done, count me out. But if you're there and you have a good mediator and it's maybe something that can be resolved and you can bridge a gap, it's really an opportunity to get people to stay. Even people who say, I'm out of here, this is an offensive negotiation. You can maybe get them to just calm down, stay there, let's just see what happens. And I think sometimes that ability may be lost or watered down a little bit when you're doing things remotely.
Absolutely.
But they may not have a choice. So,
Trevor and Kim, you want to give the counterpoint?
Sure.
Trevor or me?
Either one.
Okay. Go ahead, Kim.
Okay. So I would appreciate the savings. I'm with a lot of companies, a lot that I know when I'm talking to other companies that it's not insurance industry, but that sell things, fintech, et cetera. A lot of them are cutting back on travel because that's a way to at least have some savings. So we can also cut back on travel for our outside counsel. I think that would be even better. Then we have more of a savings. And just from a specific example, I had to attend a deposition in California, so I'm again in Philadelphia area. And when I do my travel plans, I go in and out. And I don't want to go there, have dinner, and I need to do this quickly. And then, of course, we ran into issues. So then I'm just like, oh my God, I still have a flight, and I'm continuing the deposition on the phone. Obviously, it was outside counsel was defending it, but I just think it would be much easier in not all the cases, but in some cases, if we could do some of these by video, particularly the ones that aren't that critical to the case. So save us a little bit of money and make it a little bit easier for in-house counsel to participate.
Yeah, I completely, I agree with that. And to Jennifer and Chris's points, I think it is sort of a case-by-case basis. While I've had a lot of success with mediation virtually, I never like taking a deposition over video as a litigator. I think you miss a lot not being there in person with the witness, reading those nonverbal cues, and certainly I'd be terrified to try a case this way. You can barely keep jurors awake for 10 minutes when you're staring them in the face. It's a frightening prospect, but I think there's benefits to both of it, and both of those methods. And frankly, if we have to, we have to. We're sort of put in a position where we don't have a lot of choice. So I'm glad we have something that works.
Right.
So I see we're getting all these little chat notices. Some people are agreeing. That would be crazy. Paul Custer wholeheartedly agrees with Jennifer and Chris. Live interaction is a very large part of our profession. Kimberly Sayre says they're talking about virtual jury trials in Arizona. So but that's Arizona, all right?
Yeah.
Dan, I have another question related more to in-house outside counsel relationship. What is a diplomatic way to convey to a client that their response or action plan to a litigation or business risk is not sufficient? This attorney is seeing some clients downplay threats and treating them as run-of-the-mill cases where they could be more of an existential threat. So what would your diplomatic
Document
way
things
to
in
deal with
writing.
that?
I think, for obviously like a written communication in a situation like that is really good. You certainly don't want to see a situation later where something blows up and someone says, you didn't tell me about this. And it's like, no, I told you about this, right? So I think communication is really key, right? To make sure everyone's understanding the risks, the pros and the cons, so they can really make educated and informed decisions.
Right on, right on.
Oh.
And I hope
And,
I hope everybody has the kind of relationship with their panel. I mean, everybody says this. We really mean it. We hire the lawyer, not the firm. And if you've got that kind of relationship with the lawyer, there's going to be some greater transparency there because, when we flip back to pet peeves, one of my biggest ones is I don't want any surprises. Don't surprise me at the 11th hour and tell me something's gone sideways. I want to know about it, and I want to be open about it. And I think the same thing, if you're having some difficulty as an outside lawyer communicating the gravity of something to the in-house person, you've just got to, I agree, document it in writing, but you've got to have that relationship so you can have those hard conversations too.
I would say don't go to that in-house counsel's boss or try to circumvent, because that's not going to work.
That's a relationship killer right there.
Yeah.
I agree with all those comments. I mean, a really good lawyer is half advocate and half counselor. I mean, I want candid advice with you looking out for my interests, and our company's interests. I mean, and candid is the key word there. I mean, I want to hear the good, bad, and the ugly, and then we can make a decision together. I mean, I like to think that I listen to my attorneys 99% of the time, but it's about having...
They're all smarter than me, so I always do.
Exactly.
Hey, Trevor, you were an outside litigator until last year. You've been an in-house counsel for 1 year. Do you have any interesting insights on that switch for you and what it feels like on the other side, things you didn't realize as an outside counsel?
Absolutely. It was a very awkward transition at first, to be honest. You go from tracking every single minute of every single day, and then you start spinning even more plates, but you don't have to track them. That's been the biggest surprise to me is, when I came into the position, I expected to be all litigation focused, everything, professional liability, everything, general liability, and it is everything. You are the lawyer. We have 16,000 employees in our company, and you're the guy. When people have something go wrong, you're the guy, and they call you and want advice on that. And, I've really come to enjoy that aspect of it. I wanted to be a lawyer because I liked helping people and help solve problems. And I feel like I do a lot more of that here in-house than I did outside, to be honest.
Are there things outside counsel do now that you used to do that you go, oh, why did I do that? Or, I wish that they didn't do that.
Asking for authority at the last minute and then say, well, if you don't give it, I kind of have to have it. That sort of. And I was not great about that as an outside lawyer, but now I get it. We got reserved.
Got it. Hey, Dan, having heard all these comments about discomfort with virtual mediations or bench trials, wanting the touch and feel of a real person in the room, what's your take on that as a lawyer and a psychologist working for Magna?
Well, I think first and foremost, our general admonition to everybody is, kick the tires, because I think, seeing is believing. Once, it's interesting that as I've heard everybody kind of talk about working at home and all those different stages we've gone through in the last 6 to 8 weeks, it really parallels the typical stages of grief, right? There was that just initial shock and denial, like, really, this is happening? And then we had all that pain of like, what's going to happen, and anger. Then people got depressed. And now we've gone through acceptance, or we've accepted this, and now we're trying to reconstruct our new world and hopefully get to a point of acceptance and have hope for the future. So it's interesting how that's caused us to interact in a different way. One of the things I've seen just from a psychological standpoint on these online platforms is a different level of civility and personalization. People have tried to connect at a personal level, and we joke about, the photo bombers in the back, our kids. But it's so endearing, and people have connected at a much different personal level, even in those professional environments, by being able to show 2 minutes of their kids sitting on their lap, showing their dog, their cat. It's really risen to a whole little different of interaction, even though we've all talked about there's still something we miss about that direct human connection. So I agree. I think that is still important to cherish those things that we've valued for so long, of that just natural human interaction, but embrace that future of this virtual online environment and make the best of it. I think there's so many positives to it once we get past that initial just fear of, the unknown. And that's really been our goal in our endeavors, to just, again, educate people about the use of those tools, how you can make them very functional and beneficial, and hopefully avoid the pitfalls.
Perfect. Jean, do we have other questions we should be addressing?
Yeah, there's another question just came in. What is the one thing you wish outside counsel would do on their files in light of the current pandemic? The one thing.
I have something to say for that. I think that, extra time, if you're looking for signatures or documents to be signed, if you're looking for people to track down documents, not everyone has everything they may need, in a perfect world at home. I've had definitely, even myself, several situations where I had some of my notes on certain files just on pieces of paper, and I don't have every piece of paper here. So I think really, to the extent, and as an in-house counsel, timing is very important to me. One of my biggest pet peeves ever in general is if I get, sort of a motion or a draft, and, oh, this needs to be filed by tomorrow or the day after. Can you review it? It's bad enough. And when they're looking for a signature, on an affidavit, or they're looking for some sign off on discovery, and I then need to go to yet another person, and then it makes me look bad, because it's like, how come you're really putting us under the gun, right? With not giving us really a comfortable window to review. I would say in this era, when people are really, working remotely and having different challenges in the flow of their work, especially people with kids at home, and they're responsible for making sure their kids are doing their online schoolwork, and there's a limited amount of time or space where you may be able to have really quiet, focused, confidential calls. This extra time is really going to be appreciated, I think, by anyone in-house, as well as some follow-up. It's, if something has a due date, even though people say, oh, I hate to bug you, it's like, you're not bugging me. Like, you're doing your job. I don't want to hear at the last minute, this is due. I'd rather be hearing every 2 days, have you had a chance to review, or this is going to be due, or what do we need? So communication, I think, especially now when you're not with everyone, and you may not have someone to cover something or do something, if you're not in the office, right? Even before this, I would get drafts of things, and it's like, I'm traveling at mediations or depositions. I'm not even in the office this week, and no one even told me this, you were looking for this to be completed today or tomorrow. So timing is really important, and extra consideration to that.
I totally agree with that. And, and one thing that I have found, especially now, is I don't have all my files in front of me at home necessarily. And it's nice when I get an email or correspondence to always have some context. I've got 180 litigation files at any given time. And rather than get an email that says, they granted the motion, and I'm like, oh, is that a good thing? Is that I don't know. What it's great to have some context just to sort of reorient me in the case. And then the second thing I'll say, I really appreciate some of our outside counsel thinking very creatively and sort of reevaluating how they see our cases in light of what's going on. I mean, it's one thing to look at the value of a given case and say, here's what it is 6 months ago, before all this happened. I think valuations on a lot of our cases have simply changed because, plaintiffs can't get a court date for a year and a half or ever. We have people who are, plaintiffs with small firms who are wanting to make payroll, and they may push for a settlement sooner. I like that creative thinking of say, look, the big picture of what's going on, and then apply that analysis to our caseload.
I said it earlier. The number one thing that panel outside lawyers could do is find, we all have these cases where it's with the traditional mill firm. They're going to try to build up the case. They can't really build up the case in this environment. They run a business just like we do. They got to make payroll, whatever. Get in contact with those guys. Get us some strong resolution opportunities. That's, we have these around the holidays at the end of the year. We always have these settlement days. This is what I'm pushing now. Treat this like an opportunity to resolve some files and get some closures.
Makes sense.
I was thinking the one thing the outside counsel could do is call Magna at 866. Hire me for virtual deposition now, baby, please. I'm going crazy. I'm in confinement, captivity. It's making me insane.
Peter, next time we do this, we got to end with a final question, like on Jeopardy, and play the theme music while everyone writes down their answer.
I mean, look, I hate COVID-19. I'm sure you all hate it, and some serious stuff. I do like to have fun for those of you that know me. And, the things that I miss, I mean, look, I miss the upgrades on the airplanes. I miss the upgrades at the hotels. I miss the great meals I get to have with folks like you and the people that I can't see that are attending. I can't wait to get back there, so I can't wait to get a face full of bad breath, okay? I will accept that as long as it won't kill me. So I'm looking forward to getting back to normal. But the reality is that we are in a virtual reality. And so if you're thinking in terms of, and again, this is my crass marketing, my shameless plug. I can't help it because I am trying to make sure that my company survives for post-COVID-19, and we will. But if you're a friend of Magna, or if you know of Magna and you want to get high quality virtual deposition services, let me tell you what's free. The virtual platform that we provide for your depositions is at no additional charge during the crisis. So all you got to do is schedule your deposition like you normally would, and we're not going to charge you for the platform, whether it's Zoom, WebEx, Skype, GoToMeeting. We use all of those platforms, so whatever your company requirements are, your client requirements are, we'll meet them. And let me say this, I don't know if virtual trials are going to happen or not. I think a crisis is the mother of all innovation, so we're going to see a lot of different things happening. But we've been doing online mock trials and focus groups for 13 years. We're the only patented product out there on the marketplace. So if you want to get a sense as to what COVID-19 has done to your claim from a valuation perspective, to consider, putting this thing to bed and getting some, a real sense as to what it's worth, call me. And where do you call me? 866-624-6221. Everybody, thank you. You were a fantastic panel. And next week, there will be another panel. It will either be on rainmaking, or, by the way, we're thinking about doing a depathon with the not real Donald Trump. So that should be a lot of fun. And we'll see you all in Miami on October 6th and 7th at the W for the only outdoor conference that's going to happen in this country. God bless. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Gene. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess we're done.
I think so.
I'm just waiting here awkwardly.
All right. Well, nice meeting you virtually.
Hopefully we'll see you in person next time.
All right. Bye.
All right. That would be good. Okay. See you guys. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Bye.